everyone, this is Don. Welcome to our weekly show, The Subcontinent. We are here to bring light to some of the most important issues affecting the region. Along with an in-depth analysis of the topics and perspectives from regional and international experts, we shall review what key players think and what the common people have to say. In this special edition, we shall review US President Donald Trump's first visit to India, where he was given a grand welcome by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We shall investigate whether Trump's trip was simply a diplomatic one or to appease the Indian diaspora back home ahead of his re-election. Or is Trump hiding something under his sleeve? We'll find out. For many US-centric Indians, the recent visit by Donald Trump was a blessing in disguise, as he was seen walking hand in hand with Indian Premier Narendra Modi like brothers in arms. But that's not the case for many others who are aware of America's diplomacy in the world. A $3 billion worth of military deal which Trump signed with the BJP government can be an eye-opener for the crowds welcoming their American guest. One might wonder, as the criticism of Trump and Modi's disturbing policies continues to grow at home and abroad, isn't it a bit weird that both the leaders are so welcomed by each other's fans? Well, it's definitely weird, but it's not unusual. So, what binds Trump and Modi's supporters so well? We shall find out.
US President Donald Trump has visited India with a heavy dose of pomp and pageantry. Upon his arrival, Trump was seen exchanging romance and promotion with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at a packed stadium in the city of Ahmedabad.
I am optimistic that working together, the Prime Minister and I can reach a fantastic deal that's good and even great for both of our countries.
A trip beginning not from the Indian capital but Modi's home state of Gujarat was a message the Indian Prime Minister wanted to convey to his opponents that he had built personal rapport with the American president.
Trump's visit was a sort of show and a reciprocation, as it happened in Howdy. This Howdy Modi was done in Houston. He has praised Modi when Delhi was burning. He was praising Modi, that Modi is a very religious person, he is a communal harmony and all these things he has praised. And Modi was also showering praise on him. This was not it didn't appear as a visit of two statesmen.
It seems the democracy once identified with great names such as Mahatma Gandhi has degenerated into Trumpland. And there is no one to provide him with such space than Modi himself, who even hastily built an Israeli-style wall to block the view of a slum area inhabited by poor people.
These people must be rehabilitated. They must get a better living condition. They are not worms.
This Ahmedabad, you know how a wall was built. Because Trump is also very fond of walls. He tried to create a wall in Mexico.
Trump and Modi both have been accused of playing right-wing politics. While Trump seems to have the support of right-wing extremist organizations and neo-Nazi groups like the KKK, Modi has a massive support of right-wing Hindu nationalist groups like the RSS, Shiv Sena and Bajrang Dal, which critics accuse of effectively controlling India. Trump came at a time when protests absolutely rocked the streets of major Indian cities due to the controversial anti-Muslim citizenship law. The situation grew far worse after Trump's visit, with mobs splitting blood of innocent people and burning properties such as mosques and seminaries.
Right-wing Hindu outfits have long been in support of strong ties with the US under Trump for their own reasons. Trump's policies denying visas to people from Muslim-majority nations as his nexus with the Israeli regime are some of the cases to make those outfits overjoyed as they suit their agenda and program back home. During his trip, Trump lavishly praised Modi for his democratic and tolerant leadership of India. That wasn't a surprise, though, for Indians or the international community that have not forgotten Modi's role in communal politics, including the 2002 communal violence in Gujarat state, or some of Modi's closest confidants, including the Home Minister accused of murder, kidnapping and communal carnage. Close ties with India was seemingly Trump's dream project.
I am a big fan of Hindu and I am a big fan of India.
That adoration of India's majority population and America's richest and most obviously pro-Trump minority may have just gotten deeper. During his visit to Gandhi's sacred place, the US president merely thanked Modi for his friendship, a stark difference from his predecessor Barack Obama, who called Gandhi an inspiration for Martin Luther King.
As Trump receives a grand welcome in India amid protests and riots, regional and international media have covered the events from different angles. Let's see how they're covering the situation.
Trump wanted to show people in the US that he was hugely popular abroad and that he was capable of negotiating good deals. The violence was triggered by a confrontation between Hindu supporters of the citizenship law and mostly Muslim opponents. A mob of Hindu men, their foreheads marked by a saffron stripe, angrily patrolled the streets carrying iron bars and clubs. Trump delayed India trip until after Modi's re-election. The Gujarat government is pulling out all the stops to impress Mr. Trump. The two sides announced their intention to upgrade the global strategic partnership and the sale of $3 billion worth of defense equipment to India. The two leaders also called on Islamabad to launch concerted action against all terrorist groups.
We are now joined by our guest, Ms. Rishika Pardikar, all the way from Jammu. She's an independent journalist with us. Thank you for coming to our show, Ms. Pardikar. Do you think that Trump's visit to India is a part of a personal romance with Modi, as the same pomp and show was visible when the Indian Prime Minister went to the United States last year, or otherwise?
Okay, yes. So, Namaste Trump had themes that were largely similar to Howdy Modi, which was held last year sometime in September in Houston. So it was similar in the sense that both events were about the people. It was about the personalities, Trump and Modi. And in both the instances, large crowds were gathered because both of them like addressing large cheering crowds. And as for substance, I'm not sure if there was much in the recent Namaste Trump rally because there was only a small reference made to India purchasing $3 billion of military helicopters from the US. But apart from this, there was no big mention of any economic ties or trade deals or anything of that sort. So in terms of substance, I didn't really see much apart from the fact that it was about Trump and how, in the same way that Howdy Modi was about Modi. So yes, this is largely about both the people, about both of them trying to stoke each other's ego and trying to talk about themselves and not really the countries or where we are headed.
Do you think that anti-Trump protests in India are a testimony of people's rejection of hate and divisive politics?
Yes. So there were many protests held. I know that in some parts of Karnataka, that's the state that I am from, protests were specifically held against Trump's visit. There was also an instance where about 160 activists and academicians wrote a letter saying that they reject this fascist alliance between Modi and Trump. So there have been quite a few protests against Trump's visit specifically, but more than this, what I think is a clear rejection of divisive policies are the large number of protests that have been held since December in India against CA and NRC. CA and NRC are weapons. They're weapons for communal violence. They're weapons to target minorities. And there have been large-scale protests held since December across the country against this policy. So I think more than the specific anti-Trump protests, these CA and NRC protests are a testimony to the rejection of divisive policies.
All right, before moving on with the rest of the program, let's go back to the social media and see what the people are saying, and then we'll come back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, Mr. Pradikar, to continue, the dream of right-wing Hindu groups of Modi-Trump nexus finally come true. Is there any comment?
Okay, yes. This is a very dangerous trend because so in the backdrop of Trump's visit to Ahmedabad, Delhi was burning. And the news about Delhi burning had reached all corners. But even then, Trump refused to offer a specific comment about this. Before leaving, all that he said was that he can't comment on individual cases and that he is assured that Modi is taking steps to working closely with minorities. As of today, about 40 people have died. And even then, just before Trump left, mosques were being vandalized, Muslim homes were being set on fire. And one of BJP's MPs, Kapil Mishra, was out on the streets inciting violence. So I am sure that the administration, the Trump administration, is aware of this, and the fact that they are not speaking out shows that there is a nexus between the BJP government and the Trump administration, and it's very scary. Also, the one other aspect that I would like to mention was that Trump spoke about securing a wireless 5G network. This was probably a rebuke to China and Huawei, but it's very strange that he mentions 5G network in a country where a large section of the population in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has very, very limited access to internet. I know that in Kashmir it's only 2G services, so it's very strange that you talk about a secure 5G wireless network in a country where the ruling government is restricting access to the internet. And Trump mentioning 5G wireless connection without addressing the reality of Jammu and Kashmir, without addressing the fact that access to information is being restricted, is being curtailed, is a little scary. And yes, the nexus is dangerous.
Now, let's get to an even bigger question. This is not the first time that a US president has come to India. Trump is the 7th American head of state to visit this country. So why does the US want a cordial relationship with India? And what does it actually want in the whole region? For decades, China has worried both the US and India, as the Asian giant, which is the closest ally of India's arch rival Pakistan, is also a competitor with the US and India in terms of economic power. Meanwhile, Russia is also a matter of concern for the US, as India imports most of its military hardware from Russia and even recently brought the S-400 missile defense system from there. So, is Trump's $3 billion defense deal with India a sign that the US is trying to push Russia away?
It seems this was not just a diplomatic trip for Trump, who made a visible appearance at the Howdy Modi rally held by the Indian diaspora in Houston, Texas last year. Nor was it solely a display of solidarity with Modi at a time when India engulfed sectarian violence centered on the government's divisive measures. Instead, Trump approached India not as another nation-state, but rather another state to turn red and one more stop on his 2020 campaign trail. And his trip was strategically designed to stoke themes of nationalism and protectionism for those with a foothold in both countries. While the Indian-American vote in the US has become something to reckon with, Trump's $3 billion worth of defense deal with India can also appease America's military commercial enterprises.
We make the greatest weapons ever made. Airplanes, missiles, rockets, ships. We make the best, and we're dealing now with India.
He sent everything to India, nothing buy from India. He sold some of rockets and his own manufactured items to Indian government and Indian peoples.
He has been benefited by this, and what India has got.
No benefit for us on this visit, in my opinion.
What else the US agenda could be? Of course, the emerging triple axis including China, Russia and Pakistan has been one of them. While Russia and China have been a major concern for the US, India too has been facing an extremely problematic situation while making a balancing choice amongst China and Russia. That's why in the post-Cold War era, it has tilted significantly toward the West. India's long-standing defense supplier has traditionally been Russia, but in recent years, New Delhi has inked more and more defense deals with Washington, with purchases from the US reaching $17 billion since 2007.
Israel seems to be another factor in bringing the US and India closer. Critics say that the US and Israel are trying to form a nexus with India, not just against growing powers in the region, but to keep their self-interest intact. Israel, the closest ally of the US, is now a key ally of India, with strong economic and military ties. America is definitely trying to push its evil agenda of taking over the world through soft power and diplomacy. Only time will tell how this cooperation with India will affect the region and global geopolitics as a whole.
Trump, unlike most American political leaders before him, made his first stop in Ahmedabad, which has become a divisive symbol of the newest rendition of the Hindu nationalist movement.
Namaste. Namaste.
Trump also took the leap that Obama had been navigating in his own relationship with Modi by deciding not to directly address the communal violence that happened under the Prime Minister's watch when he was governing Gujarat as Chief Minister. Trump wrapped up his trip with an American-focused speech while the Indian capital was burning with deadly communal riots again. So while Trump might stand on a stage in India claiming his love for the country and Hindu supremacists on the other hand praying for his success, he's ignoring the fact the majority of Indians today are little concerned about Trump or Modi-style consumerism, but about basic goods such as food, clean drinking water, toilets, jobs and livable homes. It would be decades before a Trump Tower was built in Mumbai if the right-wing government remained at the helm and private media monopolized by pro-Modi conglomerate continued beating the drum of Trumpism. And for Modi, if Trump wins a second term, it will be a blessing in disguise as a Republican head of state won't dare condemn him or deny him a visa, no matter he pursues the agenda of hate and Muslim bashing.
India is going now in a very dangerous way. Government now, it is a sponsored against the Muslims and Dalits and backward communities, attack, massacre. So we want to condemn that. All parties and all religions, all communities jointly.
The visit has been a point of speculation and interest for the global community. Let's take a watch on how media is covering these developments.
This is an unmistakable public diplomacy response to the Howdy Modi extravaganza in Houston last year. Narendra Modi and Donald Trump have pushed majoritarian ideas at the expense of the minorities. Like his predecessor Barack Obama, Trump decided not to include Pakistan in this South Asia visit. Relations between the two countries haven't always been so warm, and despite the apparent bond between Modi and Trump. The Trump administration has championed the use of the term Indo-Pacific rather than Asia-Pacific, as it seeks to balance the rising power of China. Trump announced that India has signed a deal to buy more than $3 billion of advanced military equipment, including helicopters.
Now, to add some insight from the United States to this story, let's talk to a journalist, Mr. Richard Silverstein, joining us all the way from Seattle in the United States. Welcome, Mr. Silverstein. Judging him by his record, can we say that President Trump must be very happy for clinching $3 billion arms deal with India despite trade frictions over tariffs? What do you think?
Well, Donald Trump seems to be in the business of selling lots of U.S. military weapons to countries around the world, including Saudi Arabia and now India. And you'll recall also that Israel India is Israel's largest weapon supplier as well. So Trump wants to get in on that business. He's basically a wheeler dealer at heart. And I'm sure he's delighted with this arms transaction. Although we have to remember that the $100 billion arms transaction with Saudi Arabia that he touted didn't actually amount to that much when it was finally cataloged. So we'll have to see what the actual amount of this deal is, but I'm sure he's very happy with it.
So how did Israel play a role in bringing the US and India together?
Well, as your viewers will know, Bibi Netanyahu welcomed Prime Minister Modi to Israel and had a reciprocal visit where he went to India, and they were photographed embracing each other, and they share really a common hatred of Muslims, with Israel fighting against the Palestinians and against its Arab and Muslim neighbors, and Modi also occupying Kashmir and instituting martial law there. And now there are major riots throughout the country, and there's a problem with them wanting to deny citizenship to Muslims in India. So Trump, I think, is really in the same league with these people because he has a great suspicion of immigrants in this country, and also specifically Muslim Americans. And there's a Muslim American ban on many Muslim countries around the world coming into the United States. So these three parties really share a common hatred of Muslims, and that is really what is one of the big things that brings them together.
All right. Do you think that the visit for Trump is crucial ahead of this re-election, since Indian billionaires have major stake in the GOP campaign financing?
Trump has made a habit, unlike any president before him, of cultivating these foreign oligarchs, many of whom have bought $100 million penthouse suites in his buildings, his named buildings around the world. There's many of these Trump towers in India, and he's also in Russia. A lot of the Russian oligarchs have come to the United States and bought these $100 million tower suites. So I think that wealthy Indians would certainly be a market for him to promote himself. And even though it's illegal for foreign citizens to donate to U.S. election campaigns, Trump has found a way around that, unfortunately. And he very well could be looking for the same types of gifts from wealthy Indian oligarchs.
People have diverse views regarding America's intention and how it affects their communities. Let's look at the cyberspace for more. With this, we sign off our program. You can follow us on our social media platforms to stay updated. We will meet the same time, same day next week. Thanks for watching.